There we go.
This is a Dr. Phil intervention.
Yeah.
We've been in isolation a little too long.
Yeah.
How's everybody doing? All right?
Terrific. How are you?
Victor, how you doing?
We're happy to have you here.
Thank you, Victor.
Glad to be here. My pleasure.
We
I
got
think
some
we're waiting
baseball
for our
back this
host
week.
to get his audio issues sorted out.
Yeah. I haven't watched any of the whatchamacallit, the Korean stuff. I haven't had time. Chuck said his mic is busted. He'll be back on his other PC.
Right.
Okay.
So
I think I watched the opening game at like 1 in the morning.
yeah.
That was actually pretty cool to watch.
It's definitely different with nobody in the seats.
Yeah.
Just from a spectator standpoint. And who's calling the game? Is it Boog and Jessica?
It's Carl Ravitch and somebody. Can't remember the other guy.
So I can only imagine how difficult it is for them to do it in a studio and have no audience as well. So
They actually
Victor,
did it in respective homes.
Yeah, they're just doing it from their houses.
or their respective homes. Like,
Yeah.
I guess it makes it easier. You could just drink there.
Yeah.
Can't just drink in the booth.
Cheers.
4 in the morning.
Yes, you can. If you do the clear stuff, it's just water, allegedly.
Yeah.
Cheering in the press box, but drinking is just fine.
That's old school.
Mhm.
That's Harry Carey there.
Or Harry Doyle, either one.
Yeah.
They're living the Victor Rojas dream of being able to call a game with no pants on.
That's the way to do it. It really is. I have no pants on right now, so that's why I had to sneak in.
Did you ever read Joe
kidding.
Buck's book?
No.
In the
No,
first
never
chapter of Joe Buck's book, he confesses to once having peed on air into a trash can while he was broadcasting an NFL game, which I thought was like the perfect classy way to start off a Joe Buck biography.
Yeah. I could imagine if you had to do, especially in the NFL, there's not a whole lot of downtime. You got to go. You know what I mean? That's when you really, really trust your analyst to fill the time that you need
Right.
to go take a naked gun piss.
Have your own separate Victor or
What's
Victor's
that?
like, okay, Gooby Tuesday, gotta pee.
Yeah, well, hey, when on TV it's a little different. So here, I'll tell you a little insight. If we come back from break and Gooby's talking a lot, taking it out of break, the odds are I went to the bathroom. On radio, it was great back in the day because I didn't do play-by-play till the middle 3 innings. So I didn't care what I ate for dinner. I'd be like, hey, Eric, I'll see you in the top of the third. You can hand it off to me there.
Victor, do you think you might be tempted to pipe in some audience reaction sounds if the season goes forward without fans?
I think they'll play with things as the season progresses, I guess. I really don't know. People keep asking me what have you heard? I haven't heard anything. Literally have not heard anything other than what everyone reads and sees themselves. That's kind of the gist of my information, to be perfectly honest with you. I've had virtually no contact with our network. I've had no contact with the team. And so it's just kind of like whatever happens, happens. So we're kind of left in that mode of, let's assume we don't travel, right? So that we're not deemed as essential. And if we are allowed to go into our home ballparks, which that's up in the air for California to begin with, but let's assume we could do our home games at home and then the road games are from a studio. Well, we as Fox Sports West that I know of don't have a studio in LA. They do have a studio in San Diego that they assumed when they took over the Channel 4? I think it was Channel 4 down there when they bought all that and it became part of Fox Sports West. So there is a studio down there. The issue becomes if NHL and NBA kicks back up, that how does Fox Sports West divvy that up between us, the Padres, the Clippers, the Kings, and the Ducks? And so that's above my pay grade. And that's not saying much because my pay grade right now is 0 since I'm unemployed.
Hey guys, I'm
That's
back.
where I'm at. So sorry, Chuck. Hey, Chuck.
Oh, no problem.
Sorry to dominate your conversation, bro.
No. I'm actually signed in on two computers here, so I was having technical difficulties on my personal laptop, so I had to switch over to my MacBook for work. So whatever the reason is.
If you want something to work, use a Mac.
Correct.
I work on IT and I'm on a Mac on this right now.
So just real quick, guys, sorry for the stumble of, with the audio to begin with, but just I kind of wanted to just real quick set some housekeeping items before we start here. What I wanted to do is keep this as informal as we can, but at the same time, if we could just kind of, I will, as the host, pick on somebody to ask Victor a question, and we can kind of just go down the list of all of our attendees, and everybody can have a chance to ask Victor something. By the way, Victor, I do have a Mariners fan on this chat.
Cool.
Yeah.
Cool.
So kind of
My favorite ballparks.
That takes care of my question. I'm good. I just wanted to hear that.
Enjoy the rest of your weekend.
Drive home safely.
Yeah.
That's it. Or stay home safely in this case.
Yeah, no doubt, right? So thanks everybody for joining. Again, thank you, Victor, for your time tonight with the fans. Really appreciate it.
Sure.
What I was thinking we could start off with, Victor, is could you give just a little background on your career in baseball, just to give everybody kind of a, just a background, because I know everybody knows you as the Angels. But I know there's a lot more to that with your dad being in the major leagues as a manager. And I tell you what, I got some good questions to ask you later as well. But just to just set the stage of like your career and your background, and then we can kind of go from there.
Sure. The career thing has taken a lot of different turns and twists over the years. Obviously, I was born into the game and grew up in the clubhouse, if you will, especially in Kansas City. My dad retired in '77, so I was in 5th grade at the time, and I didn't have a full appreciation of what he was and what he did. He went right into coaching in '78 with the Cubs and was there for 4 seasons before he got hired by Preston Gomez and the Angels in 1982 to be kind of like an advanced scout. And so at that point, I was a freshman in high school, just getting into baseball, coming into my own. And I always dreamt about playing baseball as a professional athlete. I played all the different sports, but baseball was the one that kind of stuck for me, and went to college and did that. And in 1990, I signed with the Angels and played minor league ball for a season. Left as I got married and my wife got pregnant, and at the time was working for the Upper Deck Company, which was based in Yorba Linda off the 91 before they moved down to the San Diego area, or Vista. And I had a pretty good job, and I decided that I wanted to do that instead of get paid $125 a month playing minor league baseball. Actually, it was my contract for my second year was $825. And then when I complained about my contract being so cheap for a guy who made the All-Star team in his first season, they bumped me up to $850. And so the decision was really difficult at that point when they gave me an extra $25 or $125 for a full season. And so I ended up staying at Upper Deck, and I kind of liked the corporate world. I got back into baseball in '93 with the Marlins as their bullpen catcher. So I spent a year in the big leagues doing that, enjoyed it. I wanted to coach. And so in the Texas-Louisiana League was formed, Jack Lazorko was the commissioner of the league. And having known Jack, because he played for the Angels and my dad's affiliation at the time, he asked me if I'd be interested in going down to Harlingen, Texas, which is South Texas. There's 3 towns down there, McAllen, Harlingen, and Brownsville in South Texas. And because I was bilingual, they wanted someone that could speak both languages. So I went down there, and I was a slash pitching coach and player for Alan Ashby, former catcher for the Astros, was my manager, and enjoyed that. And the strike happened, and was planning on going back to Harlingen for the '95 season. The Blue Jays bought my contract for spring training, And after a long discussion with my parents, my dad in particular, and at the time I was kind of going through some marital issues and you know, financials. You're not making a whole lot of money at that point. I decided to go ahead and sign with the Blue Jays. So I got my bonuses and stuff like that. So I went to spring training with the Blue Jays. The strike was settled. I was done and moved back to California. I worked for Nike for a little bit at Triangle Square. That was a pretty cool store down there. And my first foray of working for a tennis shoe company. That was a great company to work for. And it was through that a friend of mine got hooked up. So I'm kind of giving you this long path because there's a lot of different things that happened before I got to age 31, 32 when I decided to get into broadcasting. I met a friend of mine who's a really good friend of mine still to this day, Andy Miller, who worked at Nike as well. And he was working for a gentleman named Roy Engelbrecht. And Roy used to run the Thursday night fights at the Irvine Marriott. And it was once, I think it was the first Thursday of every month at the Irvine Marriott there. And Andy got me hooked up with him. And so I got the chance to do the music. I was ringside for the music between rounds. That was my gig at working in professional sports. That was my first professional sports outside of playing and coaching. I enjoyed that. At the time the Rams were leaving, Roy became president of the Anaheim Piranhas, the arena football team that played at the Pond. It'll always be the Pond to me, by the way. And Roy liked the way Andy and I worked together. So he brought us over to the Piranhas to handle sales. And so I did that for a full season. And after the season, Roy knew that I was a baseball guy. Roy also sat on the board of directors of the Rancho Cucamonga Quakes, which at the time was the Padres affiliate. And they hired me. Hank Stickney hired me over there. And so I went to work in Rancho, spent a season, a little over a season there. And by then I was done in Southern California as far as the personal stuff that was going on, and moved back to Florida. Went to work for the Panthers, Florida Panthers, the National Hockey League. They were building an arena, and the management company liked my sales there, so they brought me over, and I became the sales manager for the new arena as it opened up. I went to work after that through a connection of the Panthers. Jim McLean, the golf instructor, his vice president of finance, I sold season tickets to. And so she asked me if I would ever entertain the thought of joining the golf industry and doing sales and marketing. I said, sure. So I met with Jim McLean. I went to work. My office was on the between the 11th and 12th holes at the Doral, the Blue Monster at Doral in Miami, Florida, which wasn't too shabby. Jim had schools at the time in La Quinta, in Las Vegas, or was looking at Las Vegas, and then in Traverse City, Michigan. And so I oversaw all the schools and built that up and did marketing for it. And we got pitched an idea from this internet company as the bubble was starting to bubble, if you will, in the internet in the late 90s. It was a golf instruction site where we would go out and sign the top 10 golf instructors of the world to provide exclusive golf instruction video clips on the internet, which was at the time, nobody was doing any of that stuff. We ended up signing 8 of the 10 top 10. Ledbetter, and I forget the other guy that didn't sign, but Ledbetter and somebody else were the only 2 guys that we didn't sign. We had Rick Wilson, which was Mickelson's guy, Dennis Pugh, the Colin Montgomery's guy. We had the top psychologist, and Jim was one of the investors and one of the top 10 instructors. We were based in Palm Springs, and Jim said, well, since I have a school in La Quinta, why don't you go to Palm Springs, go work for them, be a part of that. And so I ended up starting my so-called internet venture with, at the time it was called golfspan.com. Now, I don't know what, and I'm jumping ahead now, so this is like the last dance of Michael Jordan here. I don't know how it all transpired, but I believe that golfnow.com, which is owned by NBC Sports, somehow that is an iteration of what we started with golfspan.com. And so it evolved into this tea time thing. They brought in a couple of partners. I wasn't too interested in doing what they wanted to do. I thought our focus should have been the golf instruction and then evolve from there. They wanted to do weather at golf courses. They wanted to do golf club reviews. They wanted to be a catch-all for everything from the get-go, as opposed to just building that out. And it turns out that I was kind of right. My gut feeling was right, that they didn't really ever build up to what they could have been. And so I left that. I went back to Florida, met my wife, Kim, got married, and I went to work for the Performing Arts Center of Greater Miami as it was being built in downtown Miami. I was their communications and marketing guy. And it was my first foray into the nonprofit sector. Didn't really care for it a whole lot. I stayed on as a consultant until December of 2000. And I was working at Nordstrom in Boca Raton for the holidays when I got this epiphany of, I don't even know to this day how it all happened, but I told Kim, I think I want to try my hand at broadcasting. And so my plan was to call friends that I knew in independent ball, go play ball, make a little money, $1,500 or $2,000 a month. And then on the side, learn the radio business side of it. And so I called around. Nobody really wanted an ex-player in his 30s at that time. But I happened to have a friend of mine that was coaching for the Newark Bears. And he forwarded my resume to Rick Cerrone, the former big league catcher for the Yankees, owned the team. And Rick said, I don't need you as a player, but you can come up here, be the assistant GM, put the team together, and you could do the color on the radio. And I said, great. You know, it all sounded great. Went up there. Kim came up. They hired Kim as the office manager as well. So we rented a loft in downtown Newark. And I started putting the team together. And, you know, it all kind of evolved quickly. I had Jack Armstrong and Jamie Navarro were friends of mine. I'd already signed them. And then Canseco got released from spring training. Ozzie, his brother, had played for the Bears the year before. Got the call from Jose that he wanted to join the Bears. And that's how that whole thing kind of evolved with Jim Leyritz and Lance Johnson and all the big name players ended up coming to Newark. That's how it all started. And after I got there, about 30 days later, our play-by-play guy quit. So I became the play-by-play guy, having never done a game in my life. And then a month into the season, our GM was let go and I became the general manager. As a matter of fact, our first anniversary, Kim and I's first anniversary was spent in Nashua, New Hampshire. Media mayhem because of the whole Canseco thing near the Boston area. I couldn't find the code because I guess you needed a code to dial out to plug in the comm. I'm telling you, I had no idea what the heck I was doing. And some would argue that to this day, I still have no idea what I'm doing. But that was the start of my broadcasting career in Nashua, New Hampshire. And I did that for a season. I got hooked up with MLB.com. I started doing a radio show with Jonathan Mayo called The Baseball Breakfast on MLB.com, which has now evolved to MLB.TV, what it is today. 2002, I did the All-Star Game in Milwaukee. I was also the guy that did all of the video stuff for the playoffs and in particular the World Series, which the Angels won. And so all the video highlight packages, the voicing and all that stuff I did when the Angels won the World Series. As a matter of fact, we did the final one, the final video for .com. We filmed it in the lobby of MLB.com. So MLB.com is in the old Nabisco factory in Chelsea, New York, which is kind of cool because you can still see the old brick ovens. They're all covered up and everything, but they're all cubicles and the like. But they couldn't find the right place to film it. So we filmed it. I mean, there's an elevator, there's the receptionist, and there was a little ledge. So I just sat on the ledge and filmed the whole thing for the 2002 championship. That December, we went home and I said, we can't afford to do this much longer because we had our home in Fort Lauderdale and we weren't making a whole lot of money in Newark. And I said, we could do this for one more year and then we'll just, you know, move on to the next thing. And so we spent Christmas break. In January, we came back, and maybe a week, 2 weeks into coming back in January, I got a call from a guy who had been a kind of a mentor to me. He was an agent, asking me if I'd be interested in interviewing with the Arizona Diamondbacks. I mean, look, I had a great time in Newark, New Jersey. It served its purpose. I loved what I did there. But I'm sitting in my loft looking out at an abandoned building across the street. I know that Sopranos was filmed downstairs and one of the dudes got clubbed to death there. And I'm sitting there going, do I want to go to Phoenix and be in the big leagues? Yeah, I think I'll go ahead and take that interview. It worked out great. And the only reason I got that job, I believe, was because the agent represented Kevin Kennedy. and Kevin wanted that job as well, but Kevin was still doing Fox Saturday Baseball. And they wanted someone for 162 games to do color. And so he just threw my disc out there. I know this kid, baseball pedigree, give it a listen. And that's the rest is history. So I spent 1 year with the Diamondbacks. For whatever reason, they gave me a mutual option contract for 1 year. And as the season came to an end, I was doing the fall league out there. The Rangers had an opening. They called me. And I ended up signing with them, signed a 3-year deal. And then I signed another 3-year deal. But I ended up spending 5 years there because MLB Network hired me away. And then, of course, the unfortunate passing of Rory. We were in negotiations to extend my contract at MLB Network when Tim Meade called me. And here I am now 10 seasons later. So it's been kind of a whirlwind. It's been one of those things where, I don't know, luck, right place, right time, if you will, in a lot of these things, especially from the .com thing to Arizona, the Arizona situation to Texas. As a matter of fact, Texas, that year, that would have been 08, towards the end of 08. Matty Vasgersian left because he was the first one hired by MLB Network. So the Padres had an opening. I interviewed there. The White Sox flew me up for their radio job. And then I went to New Jersey to do a little screen test thing for MLB Network. And I knew on the car ride back to the airport that they were going to make an offer. MLB Network was. And I didn't want to leave Texas. I did. I loved what I was doing. I enjoyed working with Eric Nadel. And I even told the Rangers if Josh Lewin had 1 year left on his deal. And what I told John Blake of the Rangers was, I want to stay. I said, I don't want the job right now, but if you're saying there's a chance that there could be an opening after next season, I'll stay. And I remember him telling me vividly, because I just can't make that promise to you. And I said, well, then I got to take this gig. I mean, I'd be stupid not to go. And that's kind of how things have played out. And now, like I said, 10 years with the Angels, which is insane for me because it's the longest I've been in any one spot. And it's gone like that. I mean, it's flown by, and it's been an absolute blast. So I know that was convoluted and long, but I didn't go to Syracuse to become a broadcaster and landed my first gig at ESPN, and here I am 25 years later. It's just I've done a lot of different things, and I'm glad I have because it's kind of molded me to the person I am today.
That's great. Thank you, Victor. I just wanted you to give that background of how you got to where you are. I think it's really fascinating. And I can say, I know I can speak for a lot of the Angels fans on this meeting, that we all love your candidness on the air. I mean, you do have that loyalty to the team and get excited when the Angels do something well, but you also give your feedback as well on some of the players and coaching decisions. And I can say as a fan, I really appreciate that.
Well, I appreciate that. I am my father's son, and to the point where he is more forgiving than I may be. I've never believed in lying to someone, and especially in this business, painting a picture that's not factual. And so, look, like I said, I didn't go to college to do this, and to this day, I still get people in the industry for whom I work for that tell me that we'd like for you to be more this way, more traditional. And it's just not me. It's just not going to happen. 17 years doing this. I am who I am. I'm not going to change. And if you don't like it, then just make an effort to change. Whatever. I'll move on. I'll go do something else. And so I've always believed that, especially in today's world, you can't lie to the viewer. When I was doing radio for the Rangers and I was doing spring training games by myself, I mean, there was no TV coverage. There wasn't the internet coverage that we have, the social media that we have. So when Buck Showalter's making his 75th change of the third game of spring training, my best friend was playing right field. I mean, because nobody knew any better, right? It was just like, who cares? I mean, I don't know. It's the third guy wearing number 95. It became Andy Miller playing right field. Nobody knew. But the way things have gotten to this point, you just can't lie to the viewer anymore. The viewer, the listener, is just as educated, if not more so, than the people doing the talking behind the microphone. And they're going to call BS on you a lot faster today than they would have 10 years ago or 15 years ago. They maybe never would have back then.
Yeah.
Today they will, because they've got the platforms to do so. And so I've always believed that, hey, just be honest. Look, I want the team to win more than anybody. I mean, it makes my job easier. If the team wins, our job is easy. The team sucks come August 1st and you got no shot at a playoff. Try doing those games. I did those for the Rangers on radio. Those aren't fun, man. And you're dragging 60 days worth of, piping the happy BS to fans, to try to keep them entertained. Yeah. And I think that's the other thing that's changed in this business, that it has, to me, it's about entertainment. It's not about the nuts and bolts on the field. Everyone, the product that we put forth is about the players, right? But if there's things that get away from you in a game, especially early, then it becomes the entertainment value. How am I going to keep you engaged in our game? And I think the way you do that, number one, is with honesty and being forthright without crushing guys, and also having some fun when the time calls for fun. And if the things get serious, then you lock it in and you get back to the focusing in on the game.
That's great. Yeah, thanks for sharing that. That's I know we as fans really appreciate that. So, hey, I'm going to go next to Jeff, because Jeff, you'd mentioned that you may have to leave a little early. So
that's it. I'm good.
No, I'm going with the other Jeff. The G.
Settle down, Flynn.
Not the
Just call me Oracle then. I'll separate it out.
Victor, thanks for doing this with us tonight. This is great. Two quick questions, if I may. One, would love to know how your wife is doing and how she's feeling. And then also, maybe you could tell us a little bit about the podcast that you're doing now.
Kim's doing, thanks for asking about Kim. She's doing really well. The cancer is gone as far as we know. The tests have been positive. Her numbers are where they need to be with her medication. The Graves' ophthalmopathy that she suffers from, meaning I don't like to use the word disfiguration, but the difference in her eyes, that's just something that may or may not ever come back. And so you just kind of roll with it. It's no longer an issue like it was, say, a year ago, or even 13, 14 months ago, when it really first started to be noticeable and really bothersome to her. Actually longer than that, because August will be almost 2 years since it started to pop up. So that, from that standpoint, she's fine. She's living a normal life, and she's got to take her pill every morning, just like everybody else that is hypertension or hyperthyroid. So she's doing well. So thanks for asking. And the second part was the podcast. And when this whole thing happened with the pandemic, Joel Goldberg and I had spoken towards the end of last year. And I've known Joel for a couple of years, and I like him and I like his style, about doing a podcast in general. And we were going to start one in the off season, but things just kind of snowballed for me from a family, from a business standpoint, because I didn't have the time to really focus in on it. So when the pandemic hit, that weekend, as a matter of fact, we started talking. I'm like, what can we do to try to get ahead of this? And not only that, but do something that can sustain after the fact. And so we came up with the idea of doing this YouTube show. Originally it was going to be live. Then we decided we wanted to have guests, and I just wanted it to be a little bit more clean version of a show. And that's kind of how it evolved. And 2 days into it is when we decided, hey, we should just put these up as podcasts too, because not everybody does a YouTube thing. And it's been, fairly well received. I think people enjoy it. We kind of varying degrees of guests. We don't stick to any one particular topic. I think the most fun I've had with two great shows, Ted Barrett, the crew chief and MLB umpire, was awesome. And I know that was one of our highest viewed episodes on YouTube. And then talking to Kevin Youkilis, a guy I'd never met before, and learning his business, Loma Brewing Company, a craft beer business that he started after he retired. But learning about him and how he attacks the business world and the entrepreneurial spirit, which I like to talk about, and so does Joel, since he's got a public speaking business as well. So those have been the two most enjoyable. They've all been great in their own way, but those are the two that I could have kept on going. There could have been a part 2, a part 3 of those conversations. But unfortunately, for whatever reason, we never went into it with any time frame. We just figured, hey, we'll just talk until we're done talking. And then it seems to be like in that 45-minute to an hour range. And everyone's been giving very, very, very giving of their time, which has been awesome.
That's great. Thank you.
Yeah.
That's great. Victor, so I know a lot of the folks, I know Jeff and Brian were at our Fan Fest in the past, and we had you on the panel of the media one year, and one question was, what was some of the silliest stuff that you have seen in the clubhouse or with the ball player? And you had mentioned an experience with Gabe Kapler, I believe, or maybe it was A-Rod. I can't remember, but it just along those lines, what can you share with us that is kind of like something that is just some of that stuff that happens behind the scenes that is just a story to tell for the ages?
Well, the A-Rod and Kapler things there weren't stories for the ages. Those are just two instances of the way I believe players shouldn't act. And so I've no love lost for me, and especially Gabe Kapler. A-Rod's he's a different animal. But as far as specific, there's nothing that really, nothing comes out. I've been asked that question quite a bit. Do you have any stories? And I'm like, none that I'd like to share publicly or that I could share publicly. Right. And secondly, these guys today, they're really, and they have to be, I guess, because of the advent of camera phones and microphones and all that stuff. They're under the microscope so often that they really don't do a whole lot. And when they do certain things, if they do it in public, meaning by the dugout or during batting practice or something that maybe happens in the clubhouse, before BP or something like that, it doesn't really get out that often. And so nothing comes to mind, but if something does, before we're done here, I'll certainly bring it up. But nothing really stands out to me like, oh, you got to hear this story. Really, it's just it's more the stuff that goes on with me and Gooby and just interacting with other broadcasters and stuff like that. I think that's fun. Vin, a couple of years ago, we were screwing around on Snapchat and this little thing Gooby and I started this thing with Periscope one time when he would, especially in rain delays and stuff like that, he'd pretend to fall asleep in different positions. And so we would film it and stuff like that. And Vin got involved and started doing it with us when we were at the ballpark one year. Just little things like that just help pass the time and just kind of shows a different side of the individuals, but nothing from a player perspective that right now that I can think of or that I want to share. Is that fair?
Fair enough. But I got to admit, we were all in stitches that year in Tempe when you told the story of Gabe Kapler. It was pretty blunt and pretty honest. It was awesome.
Hey, you are what you are, man. So, I mean, if you're a jag-off and you treat people like that, then I'm going to call you on it. I don't care. He is what he is. So I'll never forget that. And that's the one guy that I mean, of all the players that I've ever talked to, and back then, especially when I was doing radio, I had to do a radio interview every day. And so, I mean, I'll never forget that. I did have another incident with, how am I drawing a blank now? I'll tell you in a minute once it comes up. But he was mentioned in the Mitchell report as someone who had written a check or whatever. And I brought it up during a game, and it just so happened the next day I went down to the visiting clubhouse to ask him because he was a former Ranger. Can't believe I'm blanking on the name. What's that?
Paul LaDuca, I think is the guy.
No, not LaDuca, but he was a was it not Zahn? Greg's on. Is Greg's on? Does that sound right?
He was a catcher. Yep.
Yeah. Zonnie. And I remember going down there to ask him if he would do the pregame interview. And he says, "Who's it for?" I said, "Well, Rangers radio." He said, "Do you happen to be the guy that was talking about this?" So he heard it secondhand, like somebody must have been listening to the game and heard what I said. And all I said was, "Here comes Zon." And then I mentioned the facts. He was mentioned in the report, and I didn't get into it. Yes, he was wrong, guilty, not guilty, none of that stuff. I just stated the facts as they were. And so he kind of called me out on it, and I explained it to him. I said, I didn't say anything derogatory. I just said what was in there. He goes, "How do you expect us to get beyond this if guys like yourself continue to bring it up?" I said, "Well, first of all, this was last night in the middle of the game. And secondly, I didn't write the check, dude. You're the one that wrote the check, and you're the one that's in the report. So this has anything to do with me." And I said, "If you don't want to do the interview, I could care less. I'll go find somebody else." And he said, "No, sit down. Let's talk." And he ended up doing the interview. The interview was great. And we talk all the time now. He started a new business. He's up in Canada doing an instruction thing, very similar to that golf thing I was telling you about, but he's doing it from a baseball perspective. And we spoke a couple of months ago, and I've just given him some ideas. So it's some players put up the facade to kind of test you and see where you're at. Zonnie kind of did that, and whatever, it worked out. Guys like Gabe they are what they are.
David Byerman, you got a question for Victor?
I do. Good evening, Victor. It's good to see you, and thank you very much for doing this. I think for the first question from one of us, I think it almost has to be about the trade that wasn't this offseason. Mm-hmm. I think probably everybody on this call would agree that Jock Peterson and Ross Stripling would be great additions to the Angels. But I actually want to ask you the question that isn't asked a lot about that, and it's actually on the other side of the trade. Luis Rengifo is a guy that he had a 1.2 WAR, 238 batting average. Didn't show a ton for the Angels last year, but the Dodgers saw enough in him that, by all appearances, and Jeff Fletcher pretty much confirmed the story that was out there. The Dodgers wanted to make him the centerpiece of a trade that would have brought, Jock Peterson for a year, but a cost-controllable pitcher with 3 more years of control, Ross Stripling, he's got a ton of value. So I guess my question for you is, do you see what the Dodgers saw in Rengifo? And do you think that Rengifo has that much trade potential with other teams that we might be able to maybe solve some of our pitching problems by shipping him somewhere else? He's slated to start our season in AAA.
Yeah, it's crazy to think that trade was this past offseason. It feels like 2 or 3 years ago that was talked about. But if you watch enough of the games, you would have heard me saying a number of times, Luis Rengifo reminds me of Eric Ibar. And I just like the way he plays the game. I just like the way he attacks the baseball from the offensive standpoint. I think he can. I think he's a little bit too hyper on the defensive side of things, but that's something that you could easily slow the game down. You can get guys to slow the game down. He's got good feet. He's got great hands. I like his range, and he's a guy that I don't think he's an everyday shortstop, but he's a guy you could spell a shortstop once in a while and put him over there, and he's not going to hurt you. So, and he's a switch hitter. So I like what I've seen in Luis Rengifo. Every team looks at players and evaluates the ability of those players completely differently, right? Whereas, and this is just me kind of just speculating here and not speaking with any internal knowledge, but if you, as the Angels, view Luis as a 25th man, or in this case, this year, the 26th man, and David Fletcher's your guy, or whatever the case may be, that doesn't necessarily mean the Dodgers or any other team views him that way. They could probably view him, especially in that lineup that the Dodgers have. You can hide him, and like you said, cost control for for 5 seasons. So I think which ups your value a little bit more so. I guess the trade then really becomes, is it Stripling for Rengifo when you consider Stripling's numbers from an experience standpoint and when arbitration is going to hit, because Peterson's a wash, right? Because it's 1 year and gone, and or half a year and a flip in a normal situation, unlike this year. So is Luis a trade chip? Yeah, I think he could possibly be a trade chip. When you've got somebody like David Fletcher who could just fill in and be an everyday second baseman, I could put David anywhere. I mean, when you get managers day in and day out across the board saying, give me 25 of those guys, that's a good sign. You know, does David have more trade value than Luis Rengifo? I would right now I would say yes. But it's all about looking at trajectory, right? It's like what does a team that has a need see in Luis, and how do they value him? And that in turn gives you what the return is going to be. Now, what are you asking for? Is Luis worth a 1 or 2? No, I don't think so. Is a 3-4 guy? Yeah, in the rotation, probably more a 4-5. You know, 3-4ish, 5ish maybe. But that's today. And if he's not going to play a lot, he better if he puts up great numbers at AAA, which it's a moot point this year, it seems like, because there's not going to be a minor league season, but he'll be on the taxi squad, whatever that is.
Right.
There's so many unknowns right now. The problem is now you lose another year, right? So now you have 4 years of control, 1 year before arbitration. And assuming everything stays in place after 21 with the new collective bargaining agreement, do those numbers change? And how does it affect, you know, starting in 22 going forward from either an arbitration standpoint, free agent, whatever the case may be? You never know what's going to be in play for collective bargaining agreement. So I know that's a very wordy answer to your question.
It was a pretty wordy question, to be honest. So,
but I love Luis. I would take him on my team just because he's a guy. I think he's a leader, like Eric was. Now, Eric wasn't a vocal guy. The language barrier, you know, probably prevented it, but he was a funny dude. People respected him. You knew that you wanted to go into battle with him, and that's what I see in Luis. Plus, he brings a pretty good game to the table on an everyday basis. So that's kind of how I value him. So if I were a GM and I had a need at that position, especially second base, I probably would, you know, put him a little bit higher than, or be willing to pay a little bit more than say someone else, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. Thank you.
Depending on who the comp is.
Right.
Thanks, Victor. John, you got a question for Victor?
I do. I actually want to ask you about Big Fly Gear. I'm actually really fascinated because, you know, it's basically your family business. And so I was really curious what kind of gave you the idea for it, what the expectations were, and kind of have they met or exceeded those expectations?
I knew I wanted to do something, about 3 years ago. What it was, I didn't know what it was going to be. And then in 2018, towards the end of summer of 2018, I knew that I wanted to use the term Big Fly, actually a little bit earlier in 2018. And so I started the trademark process. And it was in October when I obtained it. And, but I still didn't know what I wanted to do. We talked about apparel, but I kind of blew it off a little bit. So many baseball themed apparel companies, with baseballism being, you know, the kind of the mainstay right now. It's truly just baseball. And so as I was kind of rifling through ideas, to me, as I learned in the late 90s from the internet side of things, to me, first to market and differentiator are the two things that stand out for me pretty much across the board in any business, right? Because if you're first to market and you're doing it right, people are going to follow, or at least be curious enough to take a gander. But how different are you from everybody else? And so when I ended up saying to my wife, yeah, I want to do apparel, but this is what I want to do. Big Fly is my home run call. And instead of just doing catchy little slogans or whatever, clip art and all that stuff, what if we took a person, place, and or moment in baseball history revolving around the home run, and we created a unique graphic behind it that told the story? So if you think about community, right? If you talk about whatever, Twitter or Facebook, angelswin.com or whatever, it's about community. It's about sharing thoughts, stories, whatever the case may be. And so that's how I envisioned it. And that I create a graphic without a player's likeness or name, because I didn't want to pay a licensing fee, because I don't think it's worth it, to be perfectly honest with you, to get in bed with, you know, the Nikes and all the other people that have licenses and kind of fight that battle. I'd never recoup my money. And so we decided to do this in this unique fashion. And fortunately, I found a designer, an Angel fan, Bryce Reyes, who he and I kind of clicked the year before when he designed my logo. He's got this, we're kind of both old souls, and we like the retro look and feel. And when we started sketching some ideas out for certain things, it's like it just clicked. And so the idea was to kind of create apparel that was soft to the touch, that one, the graphic would catch you and make you look at it and say, that's pretty cool looking graphic. And two, the minute you touched our fabrics, you'd be like, wow, this is soft. And I want to put this on. I can't wait to put this on. And so we went through the whole process of trying to decide what we're going to do with as far as apparel and styles and stuff like that. And like any business, when you start, and we launched in February of last year, you're going to have ebbs and flows. You just don't know what the demographic is going to be. What's your demographic? If you say baseball fan, you're talking from the amateur level to Major League Baseball. You're talking from, 4 foot 9 inch mom to 6'7", 350, 400 pound guy who loves the San Diego Padres. You just don't know. There's such a varying degree. And so the biggest challenge for us was trying to find some sort of a middle ground. And I think we've gotten to that point where we understand what our flow is right now as far as our sizing, colors, styles, and that was a good thing. And when we made a conscious decision this past off season to kind of really focus in on the women's side, we launched the Millville Meteor, and we've got all of this momentum building in February and into March, and all of a sudden it stops. And so to your question, it far exceeded my expectations last year, because we went into this as a side business that I didn't need to put food on the table. So it was kind of like, none of my chips were in the middle of the table. I was hoping for that flush to win the hand. It was one of those, all right, we'll grow it grassroots. I'm not going to spend a whole lot of money on marketing. I've got enough followers here and there, and just kind of build it. I just put it in people's hands. They'll like it. They'll feel it. They'll want more, word of mouth and so on. And so that really surprised us how last year kind of played out. And even this year with the momentum of the women's stuff, and more specifically about the Millville. But when everything stopped, there was such an unknown there for a week or two of what's going on. It was very post 9/11 from that standpoint, where everybody just kind of held on to things and didn't know what to do. We didn't know what to do. From a business standpoint, I know I didn't want to keep with no income coming in, because if I don't work a game, I don't get paid. So I'm a freelancer. So with no income coming in, I couldn't just sit there and go, I'm going to throw cash at this in hopes of people coming back or rebuying or trying to find and mine new customers. And so we decided to do that sale that we've been doing. We've been running for a couple of months now, 25% off until baseball returns. So there's always some sort of a discount going on everything that we have in the store. And the sales have been kind of, it's weird. It's really weird. You get, $500 days, you get 0 days. You get $1,000 a day and then nothing for 3 days, and then $200 a day. There's no rhyme or reason to what the chart looks like right now. So we're fortunate that it's run out of our house. We don't have overhead. I've got one part-time person that comes in and helps me periodically. So we are kind of just in that mode right now. I know baseballism is hurting from a cash standpoint, or at least they were. I read a Forbes article, and I can understand why, because they only got half of their spring training. There's an expectation when you go down and you spend $1 million of million worth of inventory that you're going to hopefully sell through in Scottsdale, let's say, at their store there. And then all of a sudden everything stops, that you lose that foot traffic. And so that brick and mortar business, all of a sudden you've got to shift that focus to an online business. And with rent in Cooperstown, Fenway Park, Texas Live here in Arlington, that they were going to open a store here as well. And they've got, it's not an easy business right now for anybody, but if you are tied into a professional sport, it just makes it that much harder. So we're just kind of towing the line right now, and hopefully things turn around for the better. That's all we can do. We know that people like our stuff. That's a good thing. So we've been validated. And so that's all we can, and if it works out, it works out. And if it doesn't, we gave it a go, and at least we were moderately successful in our eyes.
Can I do just a quick follow-up question? What was it like when you would see a fan at the stadium wearing your gear? When you
Very
see
cool.
someone, yeah.
It's awesome. I mean, I'm now, in spring training when the Millville shirts started to ship. It wasn't quite spring break for you guys, I don't think. We were in spring break. We were in spring break when the pandemic stopped baseball. That Friday, my kids were in Guatemala. They were coming back from Guatemala on a mission trip. That was their spring break week. And I think everyone else, like in California, was the following week or like soon. So I'm sitting there going, I can't wait till Monday so I can sit, watching the game and trying to see if I see it. That's I was always looking. Now I'm looking for who's wearing it. Does somebody have a hat on? We're nowhere near, the mainstream companies. And sometimes I got to punch myself and remind myself that we are just 14, 15 months into this. It feels like 5 years. And so my expectations are up here. But then I realized, man, we're just a 13-month-old business, 14-month-old business. We're taking baby steps, especially if you think about a 3-year window to really gauge if you really have something, at least in my eyes. We still have a long ways to go. Plus, this hiccup doesn't necessarily help. We were this close to opening up a store in Cooperstown, and I've always been a gut instinct guy, and it was so tempting. And my wife kept saying, why don't we wait? And I'm like, you know what? I just there's something there that's not. It's because when I get an idea in my head, once I've thought it through, I'm 100%. I'm like, when I commit, I'm in. But there was something about it that was just kept like, yeah, let's just hold off. Let's just wait. Maybe for 21, maybe we'll open up a store there. And then all of a sudden the pandemic hits. And just imagine if we had, started to ramp up, because Cooperstown really doesn't start going until, you're talking about April, maybe May. And you buy all that inventory and you've got overhead, and all of a sudden that town, I've talked to Tim Mead a couple of times, that town has taken a huge, huge hit, unfortunately, because that is the epicenter of baseball, and there's nothing going on there right now. So we're fortunate that we didn't do it at that time from a business standpoint, but that's how I've been thinking about this whole thing, that if I'm ever going to do this, if I'm tied into the history of the game, especially from a home run perspective, that'd be the place to be. If I'm ever going to do a store, that would be the place to do it.
Thank you, Victor.
Thank you, Victor.
Yeah.
Hey, Todd, I know you're in New York, so I'm going to go to you next. It's getting late on your end.
Yeah, no worries. This is life on the East Coast. Up at 1:30 in the morning watching a 500 team in August, right? Victor, I could resonate. I'm born and raised in Newark, Jersey, so I appreciated your Newark Bears and Rick Cerrone, Seton Hall alum.
Yeah.
Story.
He's huge there, man. That guy's big.
Huge.
He would tell you that too. He goes, I'm huge here.
And so is Craig Biggio. And so we have. And I had the pleasure of meeting you and your family in 2017 in Washington when you were there for the Nats. I think I celebrated Gooby's birthday that night. You were nowhere to be seen. I'm assuming you were with him. But anyway, here in New York, we have, and like these guys, they probably all have the baseball package as well. Here in New York, we have three of the best, Gary Cohen, Keith Hernandez, and Ron Darling. So I guess my question to you is, and obviously you don't have time to watch other baseball games and other announcing pairs, but is there a pair that comes to your mind, current, that comes to mind that you kind of look at and you're like, wow, like those guys. Because to me, I mean, obviously you and Gooby, Angel guy, like, you know, love you guys. But to me, Gary Cohen, Hernandez, and Chuck brought up before about how you're not afraid to, like, you know, tell it like it is, rip into some people. We all know Keith Hernandez. He'll do that. You know, he'll do that on a whim, right? Jarling's excellent. And Gary Cohen is just a professional. So is there anyone is there a team that comes to mind or a pair that comes to mind that that you kind of look up to or like?
Nobody that really comes to mind, because I don't have the time to really watch other games. And if I do, more times than not, I'm doing something, so I have it on mute and I'm watching just the game periodically. Gary Cohen used to do radio, if I remember correctly, for the Mets.
Yes.
And so when I was with the Bears, and, you know, my dad spent some time with the Mets with Bobby Valentine. I used to listen to a lot of the radio games because I was learning the craft at the time. So I got to listen to Gary, and I always thought he was great. The difference between a two-man booth and a three-man booth, especially from a play-by-play perspective, is really it's huge. And I say that from Gary what makes Gary so good on the television side of things is that with two guys with differing opinions, one being an offensive player, the other being a pitcher, is that it's kind of like soft toss, right? When you're the coach and you're doing soft toss, you just do this, and then you get out of the way because you don't want to get hit.
You just let it go.
And that's the beauty of that, because it's just you just ask, and you just kind of just sit there and just fold your arms, and you hear a lull or whatever, oh, foul ball, left field, whatever, you know, it counts 2-1, and then you just stop and just let them go. I think that's the beauty of it. Whereas when it's a tandem, which most broadcast booths are, it's the back and forth. You kind of have to be engaged. Not that Gary's not, but I'm just saying it's. I don't think I would like it, to be perfectly honest with you, a 3-person booth. I think it's difficult, especially, and we've had it periodically when you interject someone into the conversation. If they haven't done it with you for a long period of time, timing is off. You don't know when to go in, or if Gooby, when he's to go in, who's the follow-up question, you know, those kind of things. That's the weird thing about it. And that's what makes Gary so good at doing that. As far as listening to games, I guess I listen to more radio stuff, and because I'm in my car more often than not. And I usually end up putting the radio feed on. I'm a radio guy. I came up as a radio guy. I like listening to radio calls. I like listening to the minutia, the details of what's going on a radio call. Eric Nadel is one of the best ever. And I'm fortunate that I had the opportunity to work with him. I love listening to Tom Hamilton of the Cleveland Indians. Just his excitement, and he just can't wait for the big moment. But they're all great in their own way. I mean, there's only 30 of these jobs, right? From a play-by-play perspective, you got to be halfway decent. You got to have some sort of skill or ability to obtain one of these jobs. When you look at all the numbers of minor league broadcasters that are out there trying to get into the business, so everyone just does the game a little bit differently, and a lot of times has to do with who your partner is. I'm fortunate that I got partnered with an easygoing guy who I knew, Kansas City connection. We both have 3 brothers. So there's just so many things that kind of came into play for us. And even through that difficult time of coming in, with Roy having just passed away a couple of months before, that made the transition a little bit easier for me because it was Gooby. You know, if it was someone I didn't know, I really would have felt this spotlight or this pressure of don't fail. And I never felt that when we started because of my broadcast partner. And I think that's the biggest key. I think to be a great play-by-play guy, you got to have a great analyst by your side. And that's just how I believe it. I mean, Jack Buck and Tim McCarver, back in the day with the St. Louis Cardinals, any number of guys, Joe Garagiola, Vin Scully, you know what I mean? On the NBC games. It's just any number of guys. Al Michaels, Jim Palmer, you know what I mean? On ABC games. So I just think that I think there's so many variables in there. So I don't know if I answered your question directly.
No, that's
and
we won't have to
defer to radio.
That's fine, and we won't have to talk about the criminal actions going on in Kansas right now. So we could just go to the next question.
Alleged.
Thanks, Scott.
Okay, next I'm going to go to Matt. Matt Farley, you're up.
Hey, thanks for tolerating an outsider for this session. Appreciate it. Truck actually asked me to come on this session yesterday, and when he did, I started kind of thinking about all of the Angels Mariner memories that I have. It's interesting that the Mariners and the Angels histories are so informed by one another. It was the very first Mariner game was an Angel game. The AL West tiebreaker in '95, all the way up through Tyler Skaggs, the combined no-hitter for Tyler Skaggs last year, and about 50 Mike Trout, Felix Hernandez home runs in between. I'm curious, I'm always interested in an outsider perspective. When you look at the schedule and you see Seattle is coming up, is there something in particular that you're looking forward to, or a player or a personality that you're looking forward to seeing, or a particular memory that crosses through your mind? When you look and see Seattle's coming up, what goes through your head?
The ballpark initially, the city and the ballpark. I love going to that facility. I think it's a terrific stadium, like the pond in Anaheim. I just think it'll always be Safeco to me, and I probably still screw that up. But I just, from a player perspective, Ichiro was the guy. Even when I was with the Rangers, I was in Seattle when he broke the hits record. A little flare, in typical Ichiro fashion, little flare just beyond the shortstop position to set the all-time hits record for a season. And that was a very special moment. So even watching him, whether it's in Seattle or not, he was just you always just stop. Kind of like we get a chance to watch Trout every day and you kind of just stop what you're doing just to see, just in case. Same thing with Ichiro. He came to the plate. What's he going to do? The ball hit the right field. Where's he throwing it with a man on base? You know what I mean? You just wanted to see the arm. And then when Felix in his prime, man, that was just stupid. Even before King's Court and all that stuff, when he was locked in his prime, you just knew that there was a chance for something special to happen. And if you didn't get him early, he was just going to settle in and make you look foolish. And I always enjoyed his competitiveness. And I think he still has it. Clearly his stuff has fallen off a little bit. And it was kind of really weird to see him in an Atlanta Braves uniform in spring training. But I'm glad he still has the desire to go out and feel like he can compete. But it's just so difficult. There's so much mileage on that arm. And to do it at an early age too. That's the thing. Like he had this presence about him at an early age. And there's guys that come into the league. You know, when DeGrom came to the league, it's like he had the stuff, but he just didn't. I don't know. Felix had this look about him, like he was pissed and he was going to shove it every single time. And DeGrom's gotten to that level, right? He's already there because he's such a great pitcher. But I don't know if that's the right combination as far as comparison, but Felix always had it, and you knew that when you were going there, and Felix was one of the 3 or 4 guys that you were going to face. The odds are you're probably going to suck up a Louis if he had his stuff going. So those are the 2 guys, Ichiro and Felix for me.
If I may, so I was at that Ichiro game as well. As probably one of my favorite memories. But just a real quick kind of another outsider question. When Chuck asked me to come on, I knew instantly who you were because of your big calls. I knew Big Fly. I knew Light That Baby Up. I was familiar with that. But if there was one particular play call that maybe you're most proud of, or you feel you really just nailed it, and you would offer up to somebody who wasn't as familiar with your work as obviously everybody else here is, what would it be?
Probably Sammy Sosa's 600th home run.
Really?
I had the radio call with the Rangers. Awesome. And I think because we were in Cincinnati before we came home. And I had Sammy's 599th, and I want to say it was a grand slam to right field against the Reds. And the next day on the bus, on the way to the ballpark, I told Eric Nadel, I said, listen, man, I'm nobody. You've been doing this for 28 years. You're the Rangers guy. Every time that Sammy comes up, I want, if it happens in because I did the middle 3 innings. So I had 4, 5, and 6. If he comes up in my innings and he hasn't hit 600, I want to hand it off to you so that you have the radio call. And he looked at me right away and he said, absolutely not. Because when it happens, it happens. And we obviously didn't hit one in Cincinnati. We came home playing the Cubs. And Jason Marquis is on the mound wearing Sammy Sosa's old number 21, packed house in Arlington. And it just so happened it was my turn. And, you know, you hit it out the right center field, typical inside-out swing for Sammy. And I just, you know, I don't write things down. I'm not a big catcher. I've had Albert's 499 and 500. I've had a 600. I had a 3,000 hit, a couple of no-hitters. Sammy's 600. I don't jot what I'm going to say. It's just whatever I say, you know. I want it to be natural. And, you know, for whatever reason, it was like you just locked in the moment, and it just happens. And like a radio, it's different because you have to be descriptive, right? What's the pitcher doing? Here comes the pitch, a swing and a drive to right center field. So-and-so is going, you know what I mean? So it's very meticulous, whereas on TV, you could kind of just go, you know, you kind of pause, you let the pictures tell the story. So I thought that was, for me, at the major league level, that was the one call that still stands out to me. I did have one other call, that 2002 All-Star game, when I was still working with the New York Bears, and I was working for .com at the time in Milwaukee. And it was Damian Miller. Jimmy Rollins was at first base, and Damian Miller hit a ball to left center field. And to this day, I think it's the best call I've ever had of anything. And it's at that moment I was recording it, and I was trying to put together some sort of a tape. You know, I had no audio tape or anything like that. And every time I listen to that, it's like, wow, I sound like a big league broadcaster. Like that sounds like a radio call. I didn't even sound like me. Let's put it that way. I don't like the sound of my voice. But every time I listened to that call, it was like, that's pretty good. You know, that was, and all it was is that I nailed it. The swing. Here's a drive out to left center field. Looks like a double. Rollins rounding second. I forget who's in center field. Picks up the ball in the warning track. Rollins being waved home. Here comes, I mean, it was just like this perfect sequence of events. And I just nailed it. And it's just like, you know, when you nail something. And, I guess that was a major league game, but I wasn't a major league broadcaster at the time. But I guess non-major league game for me as a minor league broadcaster, that's probably my best call. But in the big leagues, the Sosa 600.
I'll definitely I'll have to check it out. Thanks, man. Appreciate it.
You got it, bro.
Hey, Brian Hilton, you're up.
Hey, Victor. How you doing, bud?
Good, man. How are you?
Real good. Real good. Hey, I've got a dozen questions for you. First of all, thank you so much for doing this.
You got it.
It's from a fan's point, it's hell right now. And I know you know that. I want to go back to where before Chuck got his microphone fixed. We were talking about, you know, what you knew about what was going to happen, and you had said, you know what we know. But I'd like for you to
did Brian freeze?
What do you think? No. Did I freeze?
You froze a little bit. And this after you were just giving Chuck crap for his microphone. You just went,
oh that's it. Okay,
Karma.
You're at the cusp of the question. Oh. I'm just kidding.
So anyway, my question is, if you could pick up where you left off with, you know as much as we know, but then also, what do you think we're going to look like going into the rest of the season with the governor that we have?
Dude, I'll give you the same response I tell everybody.
Yeah.
I have no idea.
Okay.
I really don't. There was an article today in the New York Post this evening, Joel Sherman of the New York Post, talking about what the owners are going to propose, allegedly propose to the Players Association come Tuesday, some sort of an 80-game type of schedule, the expanded playoffs. But like most of these articles that are written is the what ifs, that we hope, all these variables that come into play, right? Because nobody knows.
Right.
Who cares, to be perfectly honest with you, what the owners propose to the players? Because let's assume that whatever it is that they propose, the players say, okay, now you got to go to all the individual towns or cities and states to find out if you can actually perform that.
Right.
And if one or two say no, then what do? Go back to the drawing board? So, look, I want baseball back more than anybody else. What I am tired of is all of these type of stories. Just give me the date. When you guys come to an agreement, tell us what the start date is, and we can all go from there. But the ebbs and flows of everything that's been written over the last couple of months, we hope that this happens. If this happens, if the governors allow this, I don't know that it serves any purpose other than honestly clickbait, because that's what it is. You're talking about subscription-based models as far as the newspapers are concerned, right? And while some of them, majority of which are free now, they just want you to click on their stories, and there's no basis or meat to it other than sources say. Now, when Tony Clark and Rob Manfred have a joint press release that says the Players Association, Major League Baseball, are proud to announce the start of the Major League Baseball season come whatever the date is, July 1, August 1, whatever the date is, then let's celebrate and let's go forward. Give us the particulars at that point. But to speculate all this stuff, all you're doing is constantly throwing stuff on the wall to see what sticks. And I don't know that it really does anything but really frustrate fans. I know as a fan, I'm frustrated.
Absolutely.
I don't want to hear it anymore.
A follow-up just real quick, because you said you were a freelancer.
Mm-hmm.
What about the whole independent contractor law that's going on in California? How does that affect you?
The gig economy?
Yeah.
Now, it doesn't theoretically affect me, but I'm lumped into it as Sinclair Broadcasting Group has taken the stance of no longer having. So like my contract in the past, I have a company, an S Corp in Texas. That's where I live. That's where I work, theoretically, and with my business. And so my contracts in the past have been between Fox Sports West and Big Fly Media Corp. Okay. Now that no longer can happen because of this law that went into effect on January 1st.
Right.
And so the advantages that I could have doing things that way, billing Fox for my games through my company and so on and so forth, I can no longer do. So now my company or my contract is between myself and Fox Sports West. So that's the only way it impacts me as a freelancer, because I don't believe, as I've read the law and my lawyers have read the law, it's intended to include us as broadcasters. Like anything else that's written, like anything else in today's world, I say red, the other person says blue. I mean, that's just the way things are in today's world. So I think it's all subject to interpretation. I personally don't believe in that law. I don't think it's fair. But I'm not one. You're never going to get me to chime in on the political landscape of anything. But I know this because I had to go through this off season negotiating a contract, and so that's why I could speak to it. That's the only reason I have an opinion on it.
Awesome. I just want to tell you that I resented you because you were taking Rory's spot. I don't want to lose you.
I appreciate that, Brian. And I look at it this way. I didn't take anybody's spot, and Rory left a huge, even though I wear a size 13, he left a huge shoe to fill. And I loved him to death. I thought he was he was a unique character and unique guy. And I'll never forget, the radio booths are side by side. When I was doing Rangers radio, Eric was to my left in the Angels visitors booth, and I was to the right, Rory, and then Terry. And so there's the glass partition. And, you know, every game or before every game, I'd always, you know, peek around the thing and say hello or whatever. And virtually every time we came to Anaheim, first game of the series, I, you know, go around the wall there and I said, gentlemen, have a good game. And Roy automatically, it'd be some sort of a smart ass thing he would say, whether it was, well, be prepared to lose to a first place team. And he would deadpan it to you to where I'd go back to Eric. I'm like, dude, is he being serious? Is like this legit? And then you just see, look over, and he's got this smirk on his face like he's jacking with you. But you just never knew. And that was his personality. And that's the one thing I'll always remember about Rory.
Awesome. Thank you, Victor. Denise, I'm going to go to you next.
Hey, hi from La Quinta.
Hello, oh, you're in La Quinta? Nice.
We are in La Quinta, yeah. So when you said that, we were like, woo, hometown shout out. Yeah, so we come over from there. We take our RV and come over and get a package and watch the games.
Awesome.
And I have to tell you, your voice is like balm to my soul right now. We very much miss the games on TV. I come home from work at night. I'm like, hey babe, you got the TV fired up? What time's opening pitch tonight? So it's kind of a thing that we do. And
cool.
And
very cool.
I just want to tell Matt really quick up in Seattle, when we get the schedule that comes out every year, I'm from Vancouver, Washington. So the first thing I do is look to see when when we're playing the Mariners in the summer, because that's when we go. So watching Albert Pujols hit his 3,000th hit up there.
I was at that game.
We were at that game. Cheers. I was like, oh, it's beautiful. It's so beautiful.
Hey, even I stood up for a third base side. Right. Wait, did I go with you, Chuck?
Yes, we were actually together for that game.
That's right.
Yeah.
I was a good sport about it.
That was a great game. And then I just want to tell Victor, like, one of our collective greatest moments at the game was my husband caught a Mike Trout foul ball. We sit, our seats are in 330. So that's kind of right on the right of all the broadcast booths there. And he caught one, and we tape the games when we're there. And so when we come home, we watch them again. And one of you guys, either Victor or Gooby, was like, ooh, nice catch from the lefty. And you guys totally made his day. He was like, they talked about me. And I was like, look how dumb I look with my mouth. I'm like, yeah. Anyway, so thank you for that.
Very cool.
For doing this. Thank you, Chuck, for inviting us. That's so exciting. And again, I'm going to, I have a million questions, like how great is David Fletcher? And so I was like, oh, the panic. So I'm going to ask you an actual kind of quasi non-baseball question. I know you've got your business going, but are you filling up your time with any sort of faux baseball shows? Like, we've watched a lot of Bull Durham, some Brockmire. You doing any of that to kind of fill the void?
I'm not, to be perfectly honest with you. I've kind of, I haven't turned on the TV during the day for a long time. More times than not, when we turn it on, it's late at night, and it's usually to watch a show or watch a movie. So I haven't watched many of those old movies. I see a lot of people talking about on Twitter and stuff like that, especially baseball related. But because of the shows that we've been doing, we decided to do them Monday through Friday. From 11 o'clock till about 3 o'clock my time, I'm pretty much tied up doing stuff, whether it's editing or whatever, after doing the show. And then it's just time to do stuff with the kids. Either I'm going to go for bike rides, or Tyler's just started baseball. He had baseball practice today. He's got baseball practice tomorrow. So he's starting to crank that back up. We can get on the tennis courts now. So he's going to start doing that as well. So I just haven't had the time really to sit down and do that stuff. And when I do, it's like, unless like The Natural or something like that happens to be on when I'm clicking through, and I'll usually stop and watch it. But no, I haven't made a conscious effort to stop and watch a particular movie or Brockmire. I started watching Brockmire. I liked it, but like the first season was cool. But after a while, to me, I just it's kind of like very repetitious. I don't know. I
did dribble off the court at the second episode of the second season. So I was like, yeah, all right, I'm kind of over this. But I mean,
Right, it's kind of the same thing, right?
It kind of filled a void, you know. But then
I hear you.
I was, although I mean, I really wondered. I was like, God, how realistic could that be? I mean, I couldn't imagine some.
I'll tell you what,
if it's clear,
if I had my choice, I would do my broadcasts for like HBO or Showtime, so I can actually say what's on my mind.
Fair enough. Fair enough. I mean, we're saying it in the stands, and so.
A lot of times I'm thinking along with you. I just can't verbalize it. Or I can if I do, I get in trouble.
Fair enough. And if you see us, you know, when we get there, we always have to like look over and see, hey, what are you guys doing? So we always are, you might see our little heads leaning over being nerds. So that's us.
Well, feel free to wave. I'll wave back to you.
All right, cool.
Enjoy La Quinta.
It's beautiful. We're sitting outside right now.
Yeah, I can tell. I know. That's awesome.
Thank you, Denise.
Thank you.
Let's see. I'm going to go to Brent next.
Great. Thank you, Victor, for being there. I know it's not the same as seeing some fans at Tepe Diablo.
Hold on one second. Denise, is your husband drinking a tall boy right now?
No, he's on a rum and on a rum and diet. We have
I saw the blue can. This is a big can. I'm like, whoa, yes.
No, we're doing insulated mugs outside. It's like 100 degrees.
Right, cool.
So we're having, got to keep them cold.
I hear you. Sorry about that.
No, I was gonna say it's not the same, but I got my Melville Meteor shirt on here, so
love it.
There's at least one fighting here, but love the gear, love what you're doing there, and I need to get my order in for you mentioned the natural, get the Wonder Boy shirt in. I gotta get my order for that. Big fan of that movie too, and I love the fact you referenced that throughout your broadcast. But I know you grew up son of a major leaguer, and I'm sure you were taught the game in probably from an old school perspective. I learned the game. My dad was born in the 40s. I learned the game the way it was played back then. And I guess recently I've gotten frustrated, and I'm trying to struggle with someone in my late 40s not being like the boomer in the room with some of the rules changes that are coming along. And like baseball's trying to tweak this game from the MLB perspective. The 3-batter rules, one in particular, is coming up this season. And just the constant trying to speed the game up. I know that you mentioned bullpen changes and how that's gotten out of hand, but I was just curious from your perspective what your thoughts were on the 3-batter minimum for the upcoming season, and just in general, like your perspective on some of these changes that seem to be rumored, or whether it's realignment and just continuing to tweak with this game that we all love so much.
Sure.
Yeah.
On the 3-batter minimum, I could take it or leave it. I can understand where they're coming from. I think there are other ways you could help speed up the game. I think the game, look, I was a traditionalist. Like you said, I was brought up that way, and I believe it. I've kind of modified my stance just because, it's like anything else, right? You either roll with the time and the changes, or you kind of get left behind the dust and you become this guy that, well, back in my day, we used to do things this way. And I never wanted to be that guy, even though I do believe in certain things and I'm pretty staunch about it. I think you have to evolve as a society, as a culture, whatever the case may be, as a sport. That said, there are already things in place in Major League Baseball that would help move the game along, such as an umpire telling the batter to get in the box, telling the pitcher to deliver a pitch, and if he doesn't deliver it, tell him to throw a pitch, or have the batter stand in there and then just call ball one. You call ball one on a pitcher that's taken too much time, or you call strike one on a hitter that refuses to get in the batter's box. You'll see how fast they get in the box, and you'll see how fast that pitcher throws the next pitch. Okay, and those are rules that are actually in the book, and so why not just implement those rules? So the 3-batter rule, I understand it. I just think if you start messing with the strategy of the game, I kind of have an issue with, the whole setup. But the flip side to that is that, okay, now you have to just evolve as a team, right? Instead of getting a left-handed pitcher in your bullpen that can only get left-handers out, why not get a left-hander in your bullpen that can get left-handers and right-handers out? It's a novel concept. I understand that. But if you're a major league pitcher, you should be able to retire one, if not both sides of the plate. That's just me. And if you can't, then you're going to be done in the minor leagues. So that's just how I look at things. So I don't care for messing around with the game a whole lot, but the game, there's way too much dead time in the course of a game. And so if you can cut that dead time down, it'll move the game along. And I don't mean like speed the game up, hey, hurry in off the field. I'm not talking about that kind of stuff. There's just way too much dead time. And I know I harp on it a lot on the broadcast, but the bullpen changes, right? A pitcher that comes in from the game gets 8 pitches on the big league mound. 8. So you've warmed up for whatever, 10 minutes. You get to come in and you get 8 warm-up tosses in addition to what you already did out there. Now, I know it's a different mound. I know sometimes it's a different direction. I totally understand that. But if a manager comes out and initially points out to the bullpen, the clock should start immediately. That pitcher's got that amount of time to get from where he's at to the big league mound. Instead, he points, they start the clock, he takes his drink of water, he throws another pitch, towels off, walks to the warning track, they restart the clock when he hits the warning track. And then it's whatever, another minute and a half. Then he gets his 8 warm-up pitches. To me, start the clock. If he throws another pitch in the bullpen mound, now he gets 7 when he gets to the big league mound. Just like it's like a child almost sometimes. You kind of have to, don't do that. Oh, okay, I won't do that anymore. It's just kind of like tell the pitcher to go ahead and pitch the ball with the guy out of the box. The guy won't step out of the batter's box. So I think there's ways of doing it without screwing around the game. Same goes with instant replay.
Yep.
If the umpire doesn't have a benefit of a camera or monitors on a wall to make a bang bang call, why should a manager, right? You want to challenge it. What's your coach, your base runner, your fielder, your bench say? And instantaneously make the decision. To me, the replay rooms, once the umpires step onto the field to play, replay rooms are closed. Players can't go in there, and you can't access them at all. Why are we waiting for, hey, what's the guy on the phone? And a lot of times you see the bench coach going, because there's no clear view. So what did we waste all that time for in trying to make a decision? Trust the player that's on the field or your coach or your guys, and hey, yeah, definitely challenge it. Well, challenge it. Just stand in the dugout and say, yeah, challenge it. Right away, get it over with. So I think there's little things you can do without really screwing with the game. Realignment's going to happen. I think realignment eventually is going to happen. I believe in the next collective bargaining agreement, especially from a geographical standpoint. I think people are, especially players, are tired about the travel, the whole West Coast, East Coast thing and all that. So I think that's a possibility on the horizon. This year, it's a wash. I wouldn't get too worked up about this year. This year, to me, it's a blank canvas. And if you're going to try things, try it this year so that everyone gets a feel for it, whether they like it or not. And maybe you implement it in the new collective bargaining agreement that's coming up after next year. That's how I look at this year. This year, whatever happens, it just is what it is. You're just going to try to play baseball in some fashion and in a safe fashion, healthy fashion. But from a rules perspective, if you play doubleheaders, play 7-inning doubleheaders. If you, because of shortened season and no minor league feeder system, then no extra innings. Tie game in the top of the 10th, put a man at second base, or do little league, whatever they call the California tiebreaker rule, or 1 out, bases loaded. Right? That's how we play little league here, select ball in Texas. They call it the California tiebreaker. Bases loaded, 1 out. Both teams get the same opportunity. And then just get it over with as quickly as possible. Because you can't go 15, 16, 17 innings in a shortened season with no minor league feeder system. You'll kill your pitching staff. So this year, I think, to me, is you're going to see a lot of different things that are just going to be more like trial balloons for things that have been talked about to see if you can implement them in the future.
Thank you. I agree. I had just a follow-up question. You mentioned something about the bullpen changes in the timer, and I agree wholeheartedly. Me and my wife have talked about that. We watch games together, and I guess the question was just for safety. You pitched professionally, and I was always curious, like, if you are warm when you come in, I understand you got to like adjust the rubber or just be used to the where your landing spot is. Does that take more than 3 or 4 pitches, truly, like for a pitcher to get comfortable?
Nah, I was a closer, dude. They say closers aren't very bright, and so that's probably why they made me a closer. I just wanted to get ready to game. I just like I knew what my job was. And so when I came into the bullpen, I had some really weird quirks. Like I wouldn't take the ball from the manager. Bill Latchman was my first minor league manager. And Bill would go to hand me the ball, and I'd say, drop the ball. He goes, what are you talking about? I said, just drop the ball. So he drops and the ball rolls out down the hill. I didn't want to take the ball from anybody. I liked the ball on the ground. So I'd come in the middle of the game, I'd go pick up the ball, and my first toss was from where the ball was at. And for me, it was more about nerves, right? So I wanted to get that nervous energy out of me. So I just grabbed the ball and I just fired to the catcher. Then I walked back up the slope. I'd take my tosses. I just wanted to go. I just wanted to keep going. So some guys, it's more up here than it is on the physical side, and they need that. And a lot of times it's probably that nervous energy just to kind of get through it, breathe. You see a lot of guys do that stuff when they come to the mound. It's just a whole psychological side of it. But to me, you have to get these guys in the game as quickly as possible. We're back from break. There are times where we are back from a break, the pitching break, and I'm resetting what's happening, and the manager's still talking to the guy he just brought in, and he hasn't thrown a pitch yet. That's insane. We just took a 2-minute break. That's just crazy to me.
Awesome. Thanks, Victor. Thanks for the question. Frank, let's go to you next.
There we go. Victor, it's great hanging with you today, and I appreciate having the opportunity to ask you a question. A little forward-looking question here. We're going to come out of this sooner or later, and looking at the free agent class of 2022 looks pretty interesting. And I'm looking at a separate screen here. Zach Greinke, Justin Verlander, Nolan Arenado. I'm not going to be interested in him probably. Clayton Kershaw, and Matt Scherzer, John Lester. Do you see the Angels kind of committing to one of those pitchers, especially the pitchers on the list? And also
that's after 21, right?
After 21, 2022.
Right.
And also, Albert Pujols is on that same list. Are the Angels going to go re-sign Albert Pujols, or are they going to go after a pitcher? It's kind of, touchy.
Yeah. I don't know that I'd be interested in any of the guys that you mentioned from the pitching front other than maybe Verlander. There's a lot of mileage on those arms. Greinke I wouldn't want. Scherzer. Now, if I had to pick between Scherzer and Verlander today, I'd take Scherzer. I don't know what it is. I think they're both equally great. I just like that mentality. I just like the way he is on the mound. Like, I don't know, just like an angry bull in the cage. That's what I like about him when he pitches. And he pitches to win every single pitch, every single at bat. And I really admire that about him. Question is, from a longevity standpoint, from a mileage standpoint, will he be able to sustain, whatever's left of this year and next year? Same with Clayton. Clayton's had his issues from an injury perspective, lower back, some leg issues. So I really don't know. I was going to say, of the group that you mentioned, the one guy that I'd like to have would be Arenado, obviously, just because SoCal kid, premier position, premier defender, terrific offensive player. and still relatively young in theory, right? So I don't know. Of that group, I don't know. And who knows where the Angels are after the 21 season? You know, what's the lineup look like? What does the minor league system produce? Is Joe Adell legit? Who's playing left field? Who's catching? You know, there's a number of issues that pop up. And you mentioned Albert. Yeah, I don't know. I had Albert on the show. He was our first guest when we first started our podcast. And I kind of asked him that question. Actually, I phrased the question more like it was about the 700 home runs. Like he's crept up to that point where with 2 full seasons, there's an outside shot at 700 home runs, which is legit. But now as the season gets shorter and shorter, does it bum you out that you're not getting those at-bats and those opportunities? So maybe this shortened season spurs him on to ask for a 1-year deal. I don't know. I'm just totally spitballing here. And do the Angels have the wherewithal? I believe he has a personal services deal with the team after his contract concludes. I'm not positive. I'm pretty sure he does. And so I don't know. Can you convert one of those years to a player contract? I don't. That's just something I don't really know about. So anything is possible. The question with Albert is always going to be, what are his legs like? How's his health? How's he swinging the bat? What does his 21 season look like? Is he still producing at the level he feels he can contribute? Now, he's been on the record a number of times saying he doesn't care about the whole hitting 300 thing for a career. If he finishes at 299, 298, he doesn't care. I mean, whatever. He's a Hall of Famer no matter what. But I think as we got to that 650 mark in home runs, I'm thinking, all right, this would be pretty cool. Now, a 700th home run call would be pretty awesome to have. That would be remarkable. I mean, because just a couple of those, man, So I don't know. I hope that he is around for a long time. I think he's a great guy. I've gotten to know him more and more. And the guy's got the biggest heart that I've ever seen. And I've never seen a guy want to win and want to contribute in some fashion, even when he was not feeling 100%, than him. He's pretty amazing. And I think what he's meant to Mike Trout, invaluable. The relationship that they have and what he's brought from being that superstar guy and teaching the next superstar of taking care of business. I think it's awesome. And now Mikey's that guy. Mikey's now that guy that's taken that throne and now teaching Shohei and Joe Adell, and you know what I mean? So it's kind of cool to see this evolution of information passing along from a guy like Albert to Mike to Shohei to Joe Adell, and so on and so forth. It's pretty cool that Mike's all of a sudden that guy.
Hey, Victor, speaking of home runs, how about this for nostalgia?
Look at those 2 black batting gloves. Look like J.B. Holmes, the golfer. Nice jog too. That is tired.
That's Victor Rojas at our. We had an annual charity softball tournament for the Miracle League, and Victor played that year and crushed it.
That ball landed yet?
Probably not.
I'm asking for a friend. 2012, man, that's crazy.
It's crazy. Tell me about it.
Yeah. 2012. Wow.
Hey, Nick, looks like you're going to be last up here. Make it good.
Real quick. Real quick. Do you see a package deal for a pitcher, Victor? Where are they going to get the pitching? That's what I'm concerned about as a fan.
I don't know how that's all going to shake out with this year, to be perfectly honest with you. Right now, everything's on hold. And so I guess the question becomes, if Major League Baseball and the Players Association agree, let's say what's been thrown out there, right? Like the June spring training 2.0 and then a July 1 start date. At what point, what's the what's Major League Baseball say as far as allowing transactions to begin occurring again? When do they unfreeze that? Is it June 1? Is it June 15? What's the schedule look like? Is it 80 games that, they're kind of proposing 80, 82? And at that point, is there a trade deadline? So I think there's way too many things I can't imagine, unless there was a trade being talked about prior to the pandemic that was pretty close to being consummated. I find it hard to believe that you're going to start spring training 2.0 and all of a sudden pull the trigger on a trade. Look, I think this year, I think everybody's got a chance. I honestly believe that, especially if they add the playoff teams that they're talking about adding. I think they're talking about adding 2 to 4 teams. I think it just becomes a sprint. I think that's what it is. I don't know if they go with a 40-man roster. It's going to have to be at least 30 to 35. It has to be a 40-man roster. It has to be, because there's no minor league system. So I don't know how you can pull off a trade this year, considering everything that's going on. And so, look, the way I look at it is from Shohei's perspective, it's kind of benefited him because he's not rehabbing, and doing his 4-inning games in season. He's doing that now in the so-called off season. So once we get going, if we do in July, to me, if he's ready to go, then he's ready to go at 100% full speed, assuming he's able to ramp up as far as the arm strength and innings. And of course, you want to treat him with kid gloves, but that's a huge boost to the rotation if he's 100%. You got to see what the rest of the guys bring to the table. I think Andrew Heaney needs to step up. He's shown flashes over the last couple of years, but it's time for him to kind of to step up. I think everyone's banking on. He certainly has the stuff to do it. Griffin Canning's had the injury. I like Patrick Sandoval. I like the way he battles. And who knows what Dylan Bundy brings to the table. So I think that's kind of and what you're getting in Felix Pena. So I think that's kind of what you go with, unless something happens that we didn't know about or was being worked on beforehand, and all of a sudden it just gets consummated before or once Major League Baseball gives the okay. I just think trades are going to be really hard to come by.
Yeah.
And also depends what the parameters that are set forth. That's how I look at it. Hadn't really thought about, to be perfectly honest with you, until you asked that question. But that's one of the things. Those are one of the number of issues they all have to work out.
You know what, Victor? Actually, you mentioned earlier how there's not going to be a minor league season. This could actually boost.
That's not official. That's not official, but the assumption is at this stage,
right,
the odds are, with them especially wanting to cut minor league teams in general to begin with,
yeah,
the odds are they're probably not going to be a minor league season.
I just wonder if that boosts Joe Adell's chances for a right field shot right at the beginning of the season.
I'd say why not?
Yeah.
I mean, really, look, Brian Goodwin's a 4th outfielder.
Right.
And, Fletch did a nice job out there, and you can put Fletch anywhere. But if Joe Adell's the Joe Adell everyone talks about, and legit, real deal, why not?
Yeah.
What do you lose in an 80-game season, And that's the other thing too. I think they did work it out in the that agreement that they came to in March, the service time. Yeah. X amount of games. But you're going to start his clock eventually. So
exactly. So
it gives you a chance to win.
Right.
Why wouldn't you take it?
Okay, Victor, I know it's getting late in your neck of the woods, so we're going to.
Chuck, you forgot Oracle here.
Oh, geez. All right. Come on, Jeff. Come in hot.
Okay, I'll come in hot and quick. Hi, Victor. Thank you again for
What's up,
sharing
buddy?
a lot of your thoughts today. So my questions mainly are growing up. What are your biggest memories growing up about baseball? Like a player in general or a occurrence in general, a famous game? And also, what would your favorite baseball movies be?
Okay. I thought initially you said throwing up instead of growing up.
Oh, growing up. Let's be honest.
I think my favorite memories are that of when I was allowed to bat boy. So when Dad, not so much with the Royals, but when he was with the Cubs coaching, I would go to spring training. Well, all of us would go to spring training, and we get a chance to bat boy down there. You know, Dave Kingman was an interesting guy in general, and Preston Gomez was the best. I mean, Preston was like a dad to my dad. I still have, if I had it here, I would show you guys. It's in my closet. I have a trunk worth a bunch of old stuff. But I remember one year, I forgot what I did. But Preston Gomez sent me a letter to my house and addressed to me and everything. And cursive letter on Cubs letterhead. And basically saying, thank you for being the bat boy, whatever. It has come to my attention that I forget what I did. I did something wrong, whatever. For this infraction, you are being fined, I think, $5 or something like that. Please make a check payable to me and either put it in the mail or give it to your dad to give to me. You know, sincerely, all my best, Preston Gomez. And the beauty of that letter is that I was so pissed when I got it, I crumbled it up and I threw it away. But I ended up by taking it out. So the letters, it's taped on this memoirs book, and then you can see the creases on the folded up. It was balled up. I don't think I ever paid that fine, but. So those were fun times in being in Mesa and being in Old Town, Scottsdale, and going to the Pink Pony Steakhouse. Those things were just cool to me. I love that time frame. And then when Dad was with the Angels, we were living in Kansas City still at the time. And so when the Angels would come to town, we'd get to be the visiting team bat boys.
Right.
And I'll never forget my brother. They got my brother with the key to the batter's box thing. And my younger brother, Bobby, like a tool, he was running all over Kauffman Stadium looking for the key to the batter's box. They sent him out at the time, the visiting bullpen was in left field and the home bullpen was in right field. So he's in the bullpen. He's asking, all you see is this. And then you see him running on the warning track all the way on the artificial turf back then and looking for George Toma, the groundskeeper, because we can't start BP without the key to the batter's box. So those are the little things that I remember that I absolutely love. I know there's a second part to your question I forgot.
Oh, the favorite baseball movies.
Well, The Natural for me is one of my favorite all-time movies. I don't know what it is about it. I don't know. I just kind of like Robert Redford in that role. I don't know. I guess as a kid, I always looked at things through rose-colored glasses, and when you watch that movie, that's kind of how you feel about the game and life in general. You know, you romanticize the game of baseball, and so I mean, my son's middle name is Hobbs.
Right.
And that's how much I like that movie. Right? Bull Durham is legit. I'm telling you, man, that they put stuff in there that, it happened in the minor leagues, but if you couldn't, there's no way you could film things that actually happened,
right?
Like in the hotels after games or going on the buses and stuff like that. It's crazy. And it was fun. It was like great times. But so they did a really nice job of capturing a good portion of that. There's so many good baseball movies, but those two to me are the ones that stand out the most.
All right, thank you.
You got it.
Thanks, Jeff. Nick, you're up. You're on mute.
There we go, better. Cool. Hey, Victor, thanks for doing this tonight, and Chuck, thanks for setting it up. And everybody, thanks for hopping on. This has been pretty cool. Hey, real quick, this whole realigning of the league, the one idea that's been kind of tossed out, I am so for it. I mean, if it's a pay-per-view match between the Astros and the Dodgers, let's do it. I'm in. I mean, I am so into watch that. I think I'm not the only one. I think Major League Baseball, I know they would have to filter a lot of things of it, but it'd be really exciting to see the realignment. And like you said, maybe an 80-game season, but realigning the league, for travel reasons and just kind of keeping everybody closer. I think that'd be definitely something interesting and also something to look forward to if that did happen. And then the second thing I wanted to talk about, Victor, is, we as Angel fans are very spoiled, and you're going to say the same thing but you were there when Mike got called up, and he's been there ever since, and he's going to be here for an awfully long time. And he's grown. We've all seen him grow from a young man to become soon to be father, and just how much he's been to the game. And I'll even be the first to tell you, I take it, I'm spoiled. Every time we watch an at bat, I sometimes will go find myself getting something to eat, because whatever he does is never going to cease to amaze me. Well, pretty much my question where I'm going with this is, how excited are you to see possibly Joe Adell come up as possibly, like you said, a 40-man guy, and seeing what he could become? The hype is there, and everything I've read so far seems to be there. And even Brent and even Marsh, he's on that list for sure. But just how excited are we to see Joe come up? And because we really haven't had a top prospect in a few years for somebody to look forward to. And Billy has done a really good job rebuilding this farm system after what Dipoto did. And that's kind of where I was going with that tonight.
Yeah, and I'm thrilled to call games that involve Mike Trout and Albert and Shohei and Andrelton Simmons and Anthony Rendon at some point this year or next. So we're fortunate in that regard. And when you get a chance to look at a player like Joe Adell and see what he's done in the minor leagues and get excited about him, you can't wait. What I hope doesn't happen is everybody puts this expectation of him being Mike Trout right out of the gate. Mike had a cup of coffee one summer, and then it was the following year, I believe we were in Cleveland when Bobby Abreu was let go, and they called up Mike Trout. And it's not as if Mike came out and was the MVP that first week and never stopped. There's ebbs and flows to even the most talented players at the beginning of their careers. So I hope that while you want him to succeed at the highest level and become a Rookie of the Year candidate, just know that he's not going to be a guy that goes 4 for 4 every single night. Nobody does. I mean, it's impossible to do. But I think we've all built up all these prospects at this point, especially really since Mike. I go back to my MLB Network days, and you talk about players and what they're going to be, and sometimes they don't live up to the expectations. And so Trout, when he finally made it, I think everyone starts comparing him to every prospect now gets compared to what Trout is as an overall player, right? He's the marker by which other players are measured. What type of prospect is he? And I think Joe Adell can be that guy. I remember when Ronald Acuna got to the big leagues, and I remember calling Joe Simpson, who called games for the Braves. I said, "Is this guy the real deal?" He says, "He's got the chance to be Trout-like." And Acuna, he's had some issues, not running some balls out, whatever. But from a talent perspective, he is an upper echelon player. He's a superstar in the making, if not already, right? I want Joe Adell to be there. I just don't want him to get down, or if he experiences some failure, the fan base, he's not the real deal. It just seems like we go hot and cold sometimes on prospects too quickly. And so I hope he gets a little bit of time to kind of prove what he's capable of doing. I thought, had he not gotten hurt last spring, that freak injury where you hurt two things at first base or past first base, and Upton going down early, in the Freeway Series, I thought, heck, why not? Had he not been hurt, would Joe Adell have been a guy that you give him a cup of coffee in the big leagues just to kind of get a feel, get his feet wet? I'm a big believer of, if you're going to bring a guy up that's got immense talent, why not get their feet wet at the major league level and experience it? Just see what it's like. Kind of like the Angels did with Trouty. It was a quick thing, and everyone knew this. He's not here to stay. Soch was very adamant. He's not here to stay. He's here to fill the void for a little bit, and he's going back down. But that little bit means a lot, man, especially for guys that are super talented players, because you get a taste of it and you're like, I don't want to be here any longer, meaning the minor leagues. And it just gives you that extra motivation. Not that they need it, but that gives you that extra motivation to get back to the big leagues and perform at the highest level with those guys. I think Joe's primed to be that guy. There's no doubt. I think a lot of people are excited about him. Oh, real quick, Chuck.
Yeah.
On realignment, I think what they proposed for this year, they're talking about the 3-10 team things geographically. Right?
East Central East or West Central East.
What has been talked about in the future, well, and who knows what that looks like now, but has been the 3 divisions still with the 5 teams, whatever, Padres, Angels, Dodgers, the California teams, let's say 1. Then you go Seattle, Colorado, Arizona, kind of sort of geographically, but still with the 3 teams. But everything's up on the board for conversation.
Yeah, it's hard to say what's going to happen.
Yep.
That means the Mariners are going to have a chance to win. Hey, there you go, Matt.
Victor, you're supposed to be in Baltimore today.
Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah.
So there.
I saw that it's supposed to be 39 degrees or something in Baltimore today. It's usually a
supposed to be a
sweat box there
snowstorm
when we're
coming
there.
into the Northeast.
Yeah. Not my problem. It's sunny and 75 here.
Remember this one, Victor?
Yeah.
So this was inspired by Victor's call, Oppo Taco, and we actually made these T-shirts for the Miracle League. We had a bunch of people come out. We raised money for the Miracle League, and again, thank you, Victor. But your call inspired this entire thing, and it was really successful.
Thanks, man. It was cool to see that. And people wonder why I stopped saying that. Yeah, I did it a little bit in with the Rangers, and then when I did MLB Network, especially when I was doing quick pitch, I kind of treated it like, older folks like me would remember the George Michael Sports Machine on Sundays, and so I treated quick pitch like when George would turn around and hit the big button, let's go to Pittsburgh, And so I would have fun with quick pitch, and I'd come up with the different sayings and stuff like Oppo Taco was one of them. And then when I came to the Angels, I used it a little bit. But there was a company in Canada that started a company called Oppo Taco, an apparel company.
Oops.
And they talked to me. They gave me like a couple of shirts, and that was it. And so at that point, I just stopped saying it, and I've never used it since. I've actually never told that story.
Oh.
So there you go.
That's good to know.
That's why I don't use it.
Well, hey, guys, just to be respectful of Victor's time, it's 10 o'clock in Texas. So let's wrap it. And Victor, just thank you so much for your time, and the stories and information that you shared tonight was invaluable, and we really appreciate it, especially during these times where there's really no baseball, to talk any. I mean, this has been really great.
Cool, man.
Thank you so much.
The genesis of our podcast and show was to kind of fill the void for baseball fans, and just kind of shoot the breeze and just have a conversation, not interview people. And, if I could do that and bring some sort of quote unquote normalcy to Angels fans by talking, either about my history of the team or whatever, I'm glad I did it. And 2 hours just went by like that. And I'm parched. My drink is low. So I'm surprised that Kim didn't come in and fill my cocktail up. But hold on a second. Hold on one second.
Okay.
Well, there we go.
He's going to the bar.
Thank you. Hey, Chuck. Thank you.
Thank you, Chuck.
Thank you so much.
Guys, I've missed this type of talk. I mean, it's one thing to talk on Twitter and talk on my website, but it's another thing to have face-to-face baseball conversations.
Oh, there we go.
You guys asked about my bride.
Hey.
She's doing really well.
Oh, good.
Great.
Hi.
Great to hear that.
Hey,
You hear that noise, Kim? You hear that noise? I believe that's Russian for "I need another drink." No, we're done. We're just wrapping up.
Oh, okay, good.
All right, I'm sorry to embarrass you.
We know she's the real star.
Oh, she is, no doubt about it, man.
I thought he went to go get Gooby.
What's that?
I thought he went to go get Gooby.
Gooby's 1,500 miles the other way.
Hey, still not far enough.
Yeah. You said that, not me.
Oh, I'm kidding.
No. We kid because we care.
We kid because we care.
All right, guys.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
You got it. My pleasure. Cheers. Stay healthy, all right, everybody?
All right.
Absolutely.
Stay safe.
Have a great night.
Likewise. You
Thank
too.
you, Chuck.
Good night.
Good night.
Thank you, Chuck.